and remind everyone to that they can ask the questions in the chat. So I'm ready if you are.
Alrighty, I will get this webinar started.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining today's Lunch and Learn as we continue to celebrate Women's History Month. Our guest today is Sarah Tourville, Executive Vice President, Chief Commercial and Community Impact Officer for the Kansas City Royals. And before we get started with questions, I'd like to, with Sarah's permission, I'd like to share her background with you. Sarah is in her 4th season with the Royals and first as the Executive Vice President, Chief Commercial and Community Impact Officer. In her role, Sarah oversees the revenue, creative content, marketing, and community impact teams. Prior to her job with Kansas City, Sarah worked with the sports media companies, Fox Sports and ESPN for 20 years. She most recently worked for Fox, creating and managing the brand partnership team. Her team was responsible for developing innovative and unique content offerings to support a business plan of $2 billion. She also led the strategic planning and collaboration for each of Fox's major sports and partnerships, including the NFL, MLB, college football and basketball, FIFA, and NASCAR. She was tasked with aligning the technology initiatives to brands and monetizing Fox's initiatives, which included developing and championing a digital strategy connecting content to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. Sarah, also spent 13 years with ESPN, overseeing the Midwest National Office in Chicago. At ESPN, she was responsible for managing a team of 40+ people with a revenue goal of $350 million across ESPN networks, the digital, mobile, audio, and print properties. She also engaged with the top few hundred brands, connecting their objectives to ESPN's content. Her 20+ years in the sports industry has provided opportunities across the media, marketing, content development, and distribution, as well as public relations and communications. Sarah has managed significant revenue partnerships and been successful due to focus on strategic planning and the ability to innovate and anticipate trends and changes. A native of St. Louis, Sarah graduated from Miami University, Ohio. She has 2 children, Lily 15, Ben 13, and when she is not attending their own sporting games, she is likely traveling with them, cooking or working out. Sarah serves on the board for the Kansas City Sports Commission, the Service Bureau, the St. Louis Sports Commission, and several committees related to her children's school and sports. Thank you so much, Sarah, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with everyone. And while I can't see all of you, I just wanted to say it's always incredible to be surrounded by great women. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I also want to remind our audience that if you have any questions, drop them in the chat, and hopefully we can get to all of them during this session. So now that I've told you about, Sarah, I've told everyone about your background. Prior to working with the Royals, you worked with several media companies. How did you end up in media?
You know, it's a funny story, actually, because I was a psychology and social work major. And until I was probably a senior in college, I thought I was going to go to law school and become a children's attorney. And I'd grown up in a family. My father worked in media and marketing. So, you know, there was always some intrigue. By the time I was in college, I thought it'd be really fun to go work for the Olympics and, you know, work with some of the most iconic brands. I found myself just working through entry-level jobs, quite candidly. So I started in media companies. My first job was with a small company that ended up getting bought by ESPN. And I worked for them for a short time, just in a very entry-level sales assistant role. I then moved on to work for Landmark Communications, which at the time they owned the Weather Channel and the Travel Channel. Found my way to Discovery Communications. So if any of you watch Discovery Networks, the Learning Channel, Animal Planet. And so I grew my experience was really while I was living in Chicago at a series of media companies that ultimately led me into sports. And as you alluded to, I've now been in sports for more than 27 years.
Thank you. Exciting. How did you transition from the media to the Royals franchise?
Yeah, that's a great question too. And I'll tell you, I had never worked in a hyper local environment where you could have so much impact in your community. And I think there's great benefits to both. The more sophisticated companies, the kind of bigger corporate companies of ESPN and Fox had tremendous resources, but I was at a transitional stage. I had just signed a new contract with Fox to extend that for 3 years when they were going through some transition and selling off various entities. So a woman came in, ironically, and I say a woman because usually you hope they understand the work-life balance, but she wanted me to move to New York. And as you alluded to, I had 2 teenagers, 2 tweens at the time. I had been running the job remotely from St. Louis and Chicago, and she was very definitive that the job needed to be in New York. So thankfully for me, because I was under a contract, I had a little bit of financial reassurance. And ironically, I was going to start a consulting business. I had 3 companies that I worked with asked me if I would do some business for them when I ended up meeting a gentleman that is now part of the Royals ownership group. And he asked me if I would come to Kansas City. This group of men and women were coming together. It was a few months before the acquisition took place in November of 19. I met John Sherman. I ended up meeting him several times over the course of a month or so. And he had always had people surround him from a strategic advisor perspective. And we knew, while he had affiliation with Major League Baseball with his equity ownership in the Cleveland Guardians, he really was looking for somebody that saw the lens of entertainment, that saw this bigger than just a baseball team. And so I came in as a strategic advisor, and shortly thereafter, we needed to modernize the company and started taking on much more of the high-level management roles for him.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
We've talked about where you've been, and now you're with the Royals. What do you do specifically in your role?
Oh my gosh. Well, I welcome anybody to come spend a day with me, because it's like walking in every day. It's a little bit of something different. So I oversee corporate partners, which is, if you come to a game, the ways that, these teams make some of their money is through selling our partnership, extending our brand to many of the partners local in Kansas City and nationally. So that's one part. I oversee the ticket sales department. I oversee everything that happens on game day. So all the fun of managing Slugger to the video boards to our marketing efforts, digital and social content. And then the last big department I oversee is community impact. So that's everything from what are our philanthropic efforts through the Kansas City Royals Foundation, the Urban Youth Academy, our relationships with players and alumni. And then my side gig right now is the past year and a half has been helping us secure a future home, as well as securing the future of how fans will access Royals games. So the media world's going through a bit of a transformation. Those are things I work with our owner at the Major League Baseball level on. So every day is a little bit different. The past, I think since January, I'm probably spending 16 hours a day focused on a campaign around a new home for the Kansas City Royals.
Okay, well, that takes me to the next question. As you know, probably better than we do, the Royals have been in the news lately. Can you talk about the plans for the downtown stadium?
Yeah, so you're right. There's a vote that's pending that will secure both the Royals and the Chiefs' future, hopefully in Jackson County for quite some time. Legislator McGee played a really crucial role of allowing voters to have the opportunity to make that decision for themselves as opposed to the government. So we have secured, our hope is to relocate downtown. We'll be anchored by a ballpark, and then we will integrate into the neighborhood, extending or expanding the local business presence with a district around that ballpark. That vote will determine if indeed that happens. Yesterday, we made a great announcement as it relates to the vote. And if you are a Jackson County voter, I think this is the type of information that's helpful. When you have an opportunity, when you're stewards of a franchise like this, which we consider to be one of Kansas City's greatest assets, our ownership group is equally invested in the product on the field as they are on the impact we have in the community. And I think that's the most fun part of my job, honestly, is being able to feel like you're truly transforming and utilizing our platform to do good and to assist people's needs. So it's become more of a solidified term, the community benefits agreement in the years past. We announced ours yesterday. It'll be the most historic community benefits agreement in all of Major League Baseball, the highest in Kansas City, 5 times larger than the airport. And we're really, what we focused on, and the anchor of that is increase in our women and minority participation goals, which is why we're here today, to give more women an opportunity, to give more minorities an opportunity, to then infuse the system with incredible workforce training. You know, as women, we struggle to find ourselves on the even path. We need childcare. We need to be able to assure that, you know, when a kid's sick, that we have flexibility, that we have great transportation to get to work, that there's continued education resources. And if we do some of those things right, we're helping people earn higher wages. We're giving them greater opportunity to generational wealth. We're helping them own their own homes, and certainly set up, you know, establish that path, not just for their kids, but for their grandkids, in terms of providing some financial security. So that's a big piece of the stadium. There's many moving parts and facets. Right now, we're focused on the campaign, but if we win that vote, we still have a lot of work to do, and the conversation doesn't end. We're going to continue to want to listen and learn. We want to be great neighbors in the Crossroads, so we'll have a separate Crossroads community impact. We want to be great partners to the Kansas City Public Schools. We want to ensure that there's no revenue loss in us, you know, moving in and shifting that property tax dollars so that they are made whole. All of those are fun things because we have this great brand, but we have a responsibility. We need to use that brand to do incredible things.
Yeah, thank you. Well, why was downtown the best choice for the Royals?
So, many of you may know a Major League Baseball team has 81 home games. So 81 times, think of it. I always say we're hosting a rock concert 81 nights a year. Well, the location of where we're at Truman Sports Complex, a few things. We've outgrown the facilities. There is deterioration in the infrastructure of it, but from a modern facilities of what our players needs, different from the NFL, our training facilities in the same building that you come visit to watch a game. The space is constrained. The opportunity to also attract fans early and keep them there late is lacking because there's a lack of development there. So because the Royals and the Chiefs have been anchored for 50 years in the same lease partnership, they can't do anything on a night that we're having a baseball game. And we can't do anything on a night, we can't extend and try to help spur the economy outside of just our game schedule. So us moving provides them optionality to host dozens more events, to do things there. And we will move downtown because it's dense, it's walkable. There's more than 10 million people that are visiting that area every day. We want to spur residential growth and development, but it really comes down to what can we do that's additive in the economy. The construction alone will generate 26,000 jobs, $1.8 billion in labor income that'll come back into the city. $2.8 billion in total economic impact. And then on a recurring basis, you'll have more than $300 million incremental. People say, oh, well, you're just moving, you're taking the financial situation you have now and just putting it in a different place. It's actually not true. This becomes additive. So if we're downtown, we serve as another destination to attract businesses to move to Kansas City. We want to be a city that we're planning for our kids and our grandkids. We want to be a destination they want to come live and stay after they go to college. And then really it becomes about that density, creating walkable neighborhoods where people come early and they stay late and they may stop at 3 or 4 places on the way to the ballpark as opposed to just one destination of driving to that game. All the revenue, the incremental revenue goes back into the team and back into the community. So what we've put forth to the county executive is a deal that we'll give back our parks tax. We'll give back the insurance money that we're currently paying today. So as a taxpayer, you'll get $200 million back on top of the $140 million of community benefits that we agreed to yesterday.
Okay, thank you very much. The next
It almost felt like I was giving like a campaign pitch, which wasn't my intention.
No, it's good information. I think that you're probably providing information that people may not otherwise get. So I think I appreciate that. I want to remind our audience, our listeners, that if you have a question, make sure there's nothing there. If you have a question, please drop it in the chat and I will ask for you. So you've already talked about the impact to the community. And so the Royals, we all know, have done a lot of charitable giving for many years, like the Negro Leagues, the Boys and Girls Club, the Kansas City Urban Youth Academy. You've talked about the commitment the Royals have to the community, or will have additional commitment to the community. Is there anything else you'd like to add there based on the other organizations that the Royals have supported?
No, it's a good point. So our primary owner, John Sherman, he and his wife, Marnie, they grew up in Kansas City. They built their businesses, raised their families. They've quietly been giving hundreds of millions of dollars. They are really invested in education because as moms, we all know that if without access to reading, if your kid's not reading by the time you're in third grade, it usually is defining their destiny in a negative fashion. We've carried much of their philanthropic spirit and tried to narrow our focus. So we focus on physical activity amongst kids to assist in behavioral health, general mental health and awareness. We focus on literacy initiatives and youth education, as well as serving the military. You mentioned the Urban Youth Academy. I think the last thing I'd say about what a project like Moving Downtown does is it can't just be about the Crossroads, and it can't just be about the Power and Light District. It's about connecting to 18th and Vine. So we've anchored the Urban Youth Academy there, our partners at the Negro Leagues Museum. But that area of the city needs to be revitalized. We need transportation, we need wider sidewalks, we need brighter streets, we need to spur development so that there are minority banks in the area and resources. And then, of course, you need to make sure that you're also looking at, for those even coming from underserved populations, that we're making sure that we're finding opportunities to give them the jobs, to get them to work. So transportation is really, really key. And then making sure that we're giving them a resource and training, because many people, without those social shared resources, they're having to go to many different places. And then unfortunately, their kids are not being able to get to school and do the things that we need the youth to do. I think overall, with or without the stadium, the Royals will use our brand to do great things in the community. Like I said, we're always listening and learning to the community's needs. We do have a love and passion for education, because it's also a fun way to bring sport into schools.
Sure, yeah. Thank you. What advice do you have you mentioned where you started. I mentioned where you started, and you talked about, starting at the beginning of your career. What advice do you have for young women who wish to be an executive in the sports arena?
I think the thing I always go back to is to always be curious, to be a student, always interested in learning. So I try to find, and often my kids joke, they'll say, "What are you reading?" I said, "I'm reading email," because right now we get so bogged down, but I think it's finding the time to seek to learn from others, to go to seminars like ones today, to be inspired. Curiosity tends to lead you to ask a lot more questions. And then I think I'd couple that with being vulnerable. Often as women, we think we need to go into a male-dominated industry like sports and morph into a guy. Like I've been around back in the day, right? It was like I'd walk into a locker room, and the younger side of me started to adapt to that and think I needed to laugh at their stupid, silly jokes or inappropriate things. And instead it was, you know what? I might have more emotional intelligence they do. I'm going to use that instead of trying to hide that, so that I can morph into that, finding that vulnerability to truly be ourselves. And I think the last thing I'd say is, as much as you're looking for a mentor, find time to mentor somebody else, because it's the gift that just keeps giving. Like I always think about the people that helped me, and I'm curious and I want to learn from them. But if I don't take time to help the people that are around me, or that are interested, and not even just in sport, but just interested in overcoming a negotiation or asking for more money for themselves, finding that courage to stand up. And I think as women, I love that nature. Like I tell my daughter, I'm like, what an incredible generation she's going to be raised in, where we aren't threatened by one another, but instead we're really empowered by one another.
Yeah. Do you seek out mentees, or do they seek you out?
It's a great question. Probably both. I'll walk in a room. I'll give you an example. Like there's this young woman, she's been working in emergency tech, but there was something about her. Every meeting we went in, she had this confidence and she had sort of this little swagger, but she always did the extra thing. She stopped by and she was like, "Hey, how are the kids?" And she found the right way of professional maturity, where she was probably scared to death to be coming in my office and having those things. And so people like that, and whether it's at a speaking engagement or I meet them at, a social event, I do seek them out too. And then I'm also happy if there's one thing I wish I had more of is time, right? Because I can't wait to get past some of these things so that we owe it to people around us to give that time back. I truly feel like we need to. I'm not always great at it, but I'm trying to balance that more.
Yeah, I agree. It's very important to be a mentor for mentees to seek out what they're looking for in another
Yeah.
one. Yeah, I agree, totally agree with that. How do you balance family and career?
Well, I joke sometimes, I'm sure as moms, the worst emotion is guilt. And I think that's innately in women more than it is in men, especially working women. So I quit being hard on myself thinking about work-life balance, and I think about it more as work-life integration. And I don't try to tackle what the entire month or year may look like or plan just around vacations. If I look ahead and I know this week that there's going to be a few days that, my work carries into my personal hours, I make sure that I've blocked off that exact same amount of time, that I'm putting the phone down and I'm closing the computer and I'm providing that time to the kids. Because as moms, we're always saying, put your phone down, put your phone down. But then they're watching us and I'm like, oh, I got to get this call. It's my boss. Oh, I got to do this. I will also tell you that for me, physical activity is really important. So the only time of the day where I feel like someone's not talking to me is when I'm exercising. I love the adrenaline. I love the quiet nature, sort of the competitiveness of it. If I don't make time for that in the morning, it usually is an indicator in a negative way of how my day may go. And so to me, that's important. The other thing I'd say is I've gotten much older. I knew these past few months were going to be really busy. So as I came into the new year, I needed to tell myself that my friends would still be there, but I needed to prioritize my family and my personal health and well-being. And so it's not that I've taken a back seat from being a good friend. I just know that there are some things that we know we need to put lower on the priority list. And so I think it's the ability to reassess that, but have the confidence that it's impossible to do it all.
Yeah.
And we need to stand up for ourselves and work. And, I'll say, I'm going to my kids' field hockey game. I'm leaving, setting boundaries for ourselves. And I think maybe that's one of the best things that's happened since COVID is there's now much greater tolerance that people don't want to just go to work. They need to find that work-life integration. Try not to have guilt. I don't always do it well. I certainly feel like right now I'm always joking. I'm like, gosh, my kids are going to go to therapy for one reason or the other, right? And so I tell them, I'm like, I know you're going to go to therapy because of me. Let's make it so that, we're open and honest about our needs and where we are. So we have some fun joking about my own balance.
Yeah, and I like that the statement you made about prioritizing your family and your job, and hopefully your friends, and sounds like they understand that, especially women who
Yeah.
face the same struggle of deciding whether or not do I put my friends on the back seat so I can do good at this and take care of my family and take care of my job. And so somebody listening might have had, you may have just helped someone.
I hope. And taking care of ourselves. Like it's
Yeah.
okay to go get your nails done or to lay on the couch one day and tune everybody out, because I think our role is usually so nurturing that we're nurturing people in the office, we're nurturing people at our homes, and sometimes we forget to just take care of ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. How do you stay focused on your passion? What keeps you going with your passion and career development?
I think it's a good question. I have a lot of gratitude. I mean, there's always, you wake up and you can be glass half full or you can be glass half empty. I tend to thrive in chaos and love. I always know that it won't always be like this. And so I try to find the enjoyment in what I have in front of me. Focus can be difficult. I think so much of my career you spend wanting the next job. And when I realized it is every day, if I showed up doing the job I had with a little extra, I was going to get recognized for the next job, but more importantly, I was prepared for the next job. And then I think at some point you might realize I love my job and I don't need anything more out of that job, and that's okay. And so that you kind of ebb and flow through those moments. Right now, where I am in my career is just wanting to find the opportunity to really inspire others because of my job. So it isn't about what job do I have and how does that define my ego. Instead, it's what access does my job give me to do all the other things that fulfill me. So giving back to somebody, coming to a luncheon and making new friends and talking to them, providing people in the community who would have never had a chance to go to a baseball game, go out of your way and surprise them. And that cycle of giving tends to bring back more focus for me.
Okay. I do have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So the first question is, thank you so much for taking time to speak and share with us today. How
You're welcome.
about east proposed location where development is so needed compared to close to the Sprint Center that is already congested?
Okay, so I think that the woman might be asking about why we didn't go to East Village versus Crossroads.
Okay.
I'm going to assume that might be it. You know, it's a difficult decision. It's one that probably to the public eye felt like we took way too long. But the reality is there's so many moving parts, and you have to have another party at the table that wants to negotiate with you. So that was kind of part of it, and figuring things out with Jackson County. When you look at East Village, we would have had to displace people from their homes. And it was something that we really struggled with. And it's happened in developments like in Milwaukee and the Milwaukee Bucks. But that was a setback. The financial infrastructure over in East Village would have required significantly more dollars. And as we look at Kansas City, so you have Power and Light, of which the city and taxpayers have invested in. If we had set up a separate sports and entertainment, arts and entertainment district in East Village, you would have been competing from that. So as taxpayers, it's like, are we really freeing up those financial resources? You know, can the economics of us complementing that allow the city more freedom to do other things? And perhaps we don't need as big of a district in development because the infrastructure is there. So I hope that answers your question. On top of that, as I alluded to, what really won it over for many of us was the ability to connect to 18th and Vine.
Okay. The next question is, this listener, I had been part of St. Louis Job Corps and found this experience to be very helpful in counseling and caring for young ladies. What advice do you have to support, and how active or open is KC Job Corps for teens?
You know, I don't know the answer to that, honestly. I don't know enough about KC Job Corps to probably be the best person to answer. I tried to get involved, and we're trying to do a much better job of setting up mentor programs ourselves, or at least showing up as speakers at them. I'd say I'm probably not great to answer that one specifically, but I'd love to learn more. If the question was about, you know, where else can they get involved, I'd be happy to, you know, share some information with them.
Okay, I'll see what I can find out, and maybe get Duran to get you the answer.
Okay, yeah.
Information. Okay. We still have just a couple of minutes for questions. Sarah advised that she has a hard stop at 12:45.
Yeah, about 12:40 if we can.
12:40, okay. So I just have a couple of other questions, and I'll watch the chat to make sure there aren't any others. Are we close to World Series in the next 5 years?
I love talking baseball. Well, I mean, listen, I'm not putting in all this blood, sweat, and tears for a losing team. I can tell you that much. The ownership group bought the team in 2019, and I'll tell you, I think we thought that the business side needed more attention, and the baseball side was moving along fairly well. A lot of changes happened, right? You have a new manager in JJ Piccolo's, or a general manager in JJ Piccolo, who had been under Dayton Moore. You have a new manager in Matt Quattaro. You know, last season we were out of it by the middle of May. I mean, our fans are so loyal to put up with that. And so it was very clear that we needed to make significant changes in the offseason, financial decisions that were going to, you know, shore up our future, like a Bobby Witt signing. I was in Arizona 2 weeks ago, and the youthfulness of this team and the fierce competitiveness of this team. I'm not telling you we're going to win a world championship this year, but we are going to be contending at least for that wild card position. And I think if the scouts and the people much smarter than me are right, I would tell you, you'll see us really competing in the next few years consistently for that postseason championship.
Okay, great, great. So my last question, the last question I have, and there's nothing else in the chat right now, is just as we close, based on your experiences, and you've spoken to this a little bit, but what advice do you have for the women listening, regardless of where they are in their career, regardless of their ages? What advice do you have based on your life experiences?
Yeah, I think never let a job define you. You know, make sure that your passions are really well-rounded, both at work and not at work. Celebrate other women. You know, often sometimes the people we're most competitive with are the people we feel threatened by, but they're usually the ones that have the most empathy and understanding for where we are. And you know, be forgiving. Like, you're not going to be able to do it all, and that's okay. Like, write out your goals, learn from others. Like I said, continue to focus on being a continuous learner, but have some humility and grace, because it could end at the end of the day. And I often say, I certainly don't want to be, you know, people to be at my funeral being like, she was a great sports exec. It's just one part of who I am. And I think the joy I love in work in any situation is the people I meet. And my jobs afforded me an opportunity. My career has afforded me a lot of opportunity. And often there are people I don't get a chance to talk to all the time, but I remember exactly what role they played in my life. And so I think letting go of trying to plan too far ahead of our future and think we need control all the time of it, and being in the moment, like they tell us in most areas of our life, to just do what you're doing, do it really well, find grace, find humility, find forgiveness. And ultimately, I think character wins out. You know, be true to yourself and be true to the people you're around. Being devious, you know, it just brings bad karma.
Yeah, thank you. Anything else you'd like to share before we close?
No, I would just say, I'm honored. I'm almost humbled. Like, I don't know that I offered this group of people what they needed, but I truly am appreciative of the opportunity that you all bring. And I'm always here. Anyone that is at the K, let me know and we'll come say hi. But thank you so much. I love what you're doing. I love this series, and I hope you'll invite me back.
Thank you. Thank you. We most certainly will. Thank you so much for your time, and have a wonderful day.
Well, you too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.